Hey everybody, welcome to the Rotowire Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the good folks at WynnBET, WYNNBET. Jeff Erickson here with Chris Liss. Week 1 is one game away from being in the books. We always do the recap, though, on Monday mornings, and a lot of surprises, as there is every single week of the season, but there's a lot of things I feel like I need to readjust in terms of my assumptions. A lot of things kind of got right, so let's just jump right into that, Chris. Biggest disappointment for me was the Packers. Not that I'm rooting for them, but I thought they'd win and win comfortably. I thought the Saints would be pretty bad. They were not. It was completely the opposite. The Packers looked awful. Their offensive line couldn't protect Rodgers. Rodgers looked terrible. And the Saints were efficient. They weren't prolific offensively, but they were very efficient.
Yeah, my disappointment was not betting on the Saints, making them one of my best bets and using them in the Super Contest, because I kind of knew the Saints were going to be good. I saw something, maybe it was Dalton or someone had their offensive line, Pro Football Focus or ESPN or one of those sites had their offensive line as number 1 in the NFL. And I just felt like Green Bay's soft, right? They're a finesse team. And if you have like the number 1 offensive line and a stout defensive line that's tough to run on, I thought it would be a game that the Saints would be able to control. And I didn't think it would be a blowout win for the Saints, obviously. So I was a little disappointed. Like there were 2, and you're going to be ahead in our bets because you took the Eagles money line. That was another one that I really liked, and I didn't make it a best bet, though we did use it in the Super Contest. And those were 2, like the other ones I felt that we used, they sounded good, but they were sort of the market priced all of it in. But those were 2 that people weren't really thinking. They kind of thought that like, my mic's not working according to
Native Astra says, I can hear you fine, but I don't know if everybody else can. That's the weird part. But
hold on. Let me keep talking, Jeff. Just fill
All right. So, yeah, you're right. On Force the Bet, I did take the Eagles, and that worked out pretty well. Always nice to get off to a good start there. I forgot. Who did you take?
How about now? Is that better?
I think you sound good.
Okay, all right. Well, no, I mean, I want the listeners to be able to hear, but that's just weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
He says nope, but.
Okay. So, but that's not good. Well, I guess it's okay as long as it can record on the actual podcast. But very strange. It's not working all of a sudden.
I'm going to try to turn up your volume.
I'm plugged in, man. I'm plugged in.
Yeah.
I don't know what
you can edit your mic volume by this is fun. If you see those little 3 dots.
Yeah.
Edit mic settings, edit mic volume. See if that helps a little bit.
Yeah, it's not doing anything. It's the right mic. It's plugged in.
Yeah.
Maybe all right. Hold on.
Anyways, there were a couple of interesting money line bets. People who took the Browns were pretty close to pulling that one off. Browns didn't embarrass themselves, that's for sure, but they did not pull it off in the end. Chiefs, skated out at the end of that, so it could have been another underdog that won. Yeah, the funny thing though is I did horribly in picks. I got the forced bet correct, but when it comes to like I tried to, I thought I had the football team was my best bet. I thought that the Bills would roll. They were embarrassing. I thought Tennessee would cover. They were embarrassing. I was wrong about Saints Packers. I was wrong about a lot of things. You did have the Browns. That's right. Okay. So
I had a money line.
There you go.
And,
you're much better now.
Okay, good. I had a money line and it looked good for a bit, but I don't want to even say it was close because they got up 9 with like 10 minutes left and the Chiefs scored in like 2 seconds. It was like at will. And then so I was like, okay, fine. That's the Chiefs. That didn't really surprise me. But then I was like, all right, the Browns have a great offensive line. Just beat the crap out of them and grind them down and win this game. And they couldn't do it. They couldn't move the ball in the second half really at all, especially in the fourth quarter. And I was just like, and Mayfield threw that pick. He was kind of getting, I understand he didn't want to get sacked and he's trying to throw it away and he just didn't have the arm strength and the guy was grabbing his legs while he was trying to throw. But it was just a real fail by them. I mean, that was a big game on the road to win. It was against, who you're going to probably see in the playoffs if you even make the playoffs. And you had to have a good showing. It's one thing if you get a cheap penalty against you or a drop ball in the end zone or something, but they just did not do what they had to do. Chris Jones came in and stuffed the run. They just did not step up. Chubb had a bad fumble, and it really kind of really made me diminish my view of the Browns. I was like, this team is not a serious contender. it wasn't just that they lost; it's that the Chiefs kind of at will flex their muscles and kind of just shooed them aside, basically.
I'm not really ready to dismiss them as a contender yet, but when there were so many other teams I could more readily dismiss, like I'm dismissing. I'm definitely dismissing the Packers. Maybe this was a one-off. They just had their worst day, but
you remember what Tampa did to them last year in the regular season? They took them apart. The reason why I'll say the Packers are still a contender, even though their defense is soft, is that Rodgers. We know how good he is. We know they almost beat Tampa in the playoffs. Like there's that stupid field goal, that debatable field goal call.
Right.
By LaFleur. But I mean, it was, they were in that game. It was a tough game. They were one of the 4 or 5 best teams last year, no doubt. But like Baker Mayfield, like he's got to play, in adverse conditions and do something. Now I know they didn't have Beckham, but I don't know if Beckham's ever going to be himself. I was dubious before the season. I thought he was going to play week 1. I even have him on the stake league. And I had to sub in MVS because I had Jamal Williams on my bench.
Mm-hmm.
I was waiting on Beckham. I wish I just put in Jamal Williams. But so I don't know if he's ever going to be the same guy. I liked Njoku. They were using him well. Landry made some plays, but you've got to be able to go down the field. The Bengals, your Bengals, they attacked with Jamar Chase.
They did.
You got to be able to get those splash plays where you can just throw a 50-yard bomb and make the defense worry about that. If everything's underneath, you got nothing. And the Browns, I need to see them take the top off. I need to see them, especially against a team like the Chiefs. It's great to be able to run, and it can work, but it just showed, like in this day and age, it's impossible to defend the Chiefs. The defense, it's almost impossible. The Bucs did it, but they got lucky in the Super Bowl that there were some drops and some, opportunities left on the field by the Chiefs. But
that they're playing against an offensive line that was compromised at best.
Yes,
that also
they got
has
tons
a big
of heat
part
on
of that
Mahomes.
too.
But even with the heat, Mahomes made some escapes and threw some good balls that the receivers want to hit, like Mecole Hardman in the helmet, or so that's another takeaway. That guy just doesn't exist. Like every year, and I only had drafted in 1 league this year, but I used to be like, oh, I'm going to take Mecole Hardman. He could be the number 2 guy in the Chiefs. I just don't think that guy's a player. I mean, maybe it's just week 1, but they just never design a lot of stuff for him ever. And CEH, you can put him in that boat too. He got most of the share in the backfield. They do not check down. They do not throw to him except a couple design throws. And I don't know. I think the ceiling should have been like 1.1, but it's pretty modest.
Yeah, and that's a difficult thing there to digest and challenge your assumptions. And you said this on Twitter. Nothing, just throws our assumptions out of the loop. Quite like just seeing actual results in the field, seeing week 1. Seeing that you looked at like your week 1 observations article, and you talked about some of the things that you served to disabuse you of some of your assumptions. Well, and let's hit a few of those. Starting with the Niners, it's Trey Sermon being a healthy scratch. I know there were some reports suggesting that Sermon was struggling a little bit in practice, but no one was out there saying Sermon's going to be a stretch. You're not going to see him at all. If they were, I missed it, and I'm wrong, and I'm sorry that I missed it. But I did not see that at all. I was drafting him as a guy that's eventually going to take over as the starter. The fact that they viewed him behind Elijah Mitchell, behind JaMychal Hasty, I mean that's burning a 6th round pick to get him, 6th or 7th round pick to get that guy.
You mean they traded up to get Sermon in the 4th, right? They traded up to get him. And they took Mitchell
third 88th pick overall.
In the 3rd, they traded up for him, and then they took Mitchell in the 6th. And so I do have some Mitchell in a couple leagues. It was funny. I was escorting myself in the prime time for taking the Bucs kicker, Suckup, in the 18th because I wanted a good kicker. I want a good team kicker. Mm-hmm. And that cost me my guy, Kadarius Toney, in the 19th. And I was pissed because I was like, oh, man, I should have taken a kicker to lose a player I wanted. So I was like, all right, I'll take Elijah Mitchell in the 19th. So, of course, you'd way rather have Elijah Mitchell than Kadarius Toney right now. So you don't know. You think you made a mistake, but it actually helped me by taking the kicker. I got Mitchell. I also picked him up at the, right before the start of the games. I didn't, when Sermon was scratched too. So, Mostert got hurt, which he just can't stay healthy. And that's just, everyone knows that. And so it's really important, Sermon or Mitchell. I would still hold on to Sermon, but The reason I liked Mitchell was that he's fast. He's as fast as Mostert, or just about as fast. He's like a 4.33 guy, which is blazing for a running back. And Shanahan likes these guys that can have a cut and then just go to the house. And McKinnon was fast. He was in the Niners backfield last year, a couple years ago, and he just likes really fast running backs. And so, if Mostert gets hurt, well, Sermon's like a 4.6. He's slow. So it really was a weird shift to be like, oh, Sermon's the guy. But I bought in. I just blame it on Dalton Del Don, who I listen to.
Of course,
and I took him in a couple leagues. And I tweeted about this. I was like, I owned Dalton Del Don and beat Chris Liss too. When in the third, I knew he was going to take ETN, so I beat him to it, a couple picks ahead of him. And then the fifth, I knew he was desperate for a running back, so I beat him to Sermon in the fifth. So I probably set the min on both those guys, and they're both totally worthless. But again, I would hold on to Sermon just because Hasty's nothing special, and I think that Sermon will get a chance at some point. But he likes those fast backs, and Mitchell's one of them.
Yeah. Well, when you design your draft strategy to own an opponent as opposed to just taking the best player, maybe that needs to be revised.
Don't tell people misinformation, Jeff. The most important thing is to own your opponent and troll when you're drafting. Don't worry. It's always works out best. The thing is, I like those guys. I wouldn't have done it if I didn't like those guys. And I really wanted ETN, and I knew he was going to take him. But I guess what you do in that situation, if you really want ETN in the middle of the draft season, and you got a mid-third round pick, and the guy's a sociopath like Del Don's going to take him, you just say, you know what, I'll let him overpay, and in the next draft I'll get him. I'll push up a little bit. I probably pushed it too far, but easy to say now that he's out for the year. But the Sermon thing is, it was an unforced error because he's a third round pick rookie. I've seen first round pick rookies not get work. I've seen second round pick rookies not get work. You see it all the time. Yeah. And the other one was, who's the Jets guy again? I can't remember his name anymore. Michael Carter. It's like, oh, Michael Carter going in the 6th round. He's the Jets guy. Well, why? Well, he's running with the runs a little bit. Okay. But has he been named the starter? No. Well, no one else is good there. Oh, I'm sure the coaches will just agree with us. I'm sure they'll take that 4th round Michael Carter and just make him.
They're seeing these guys every day, and every snap, every play. And we're like reading reports of like a snapshot and just using our assumptions. It's hilarious.
Yeah. And so, week 1 starts and you're like, oh, this is what they really think, and of course, week 1's not the end of the season. So, there's going to be more changes. And again, I wouldn't drop Sermon yet, but it's like, yeah, you're like, holy crap, this is not what I thought it was. And sometimes it is what you think it is. Like Jonathan Taylor, he led the team in receiving yards, and he was in there on 3rd down. They actually designed a pass to him near the goal line. He got tackled on the 2. He obviously led them in rushing. Nyheim Hines had good use too. He had like a bunch of catches and 9 carries, but like that was it. No one else got carries. And in a game flow where the Colts were behind all game, Jonathan Taylor got enough usage in the way that you need. And I was like, good. That's what I had thought. That's what I had hoped. But sometimes it's like Sermon or Brandon Ayuk was just barely used. It's weird. Shanahan said that Ayuk was partly because he'd come back from an injury. And
right. I'm not worried about Ayuk.
No, I wouldn't be too worried either.
Yeah. Suppose that Mostert news comes back on him. He's going to miss 6 weeks or some other significant period of time. How much of your budget are you going to be bidding on Elijah Mitchell?
I would say like 40, 35, 40, something like that. I know I might not get him, but I feel like I'm not worried about Mostert. I just don't think he can hold up. So I think they're going to need somebody else to get a lot of the carries anyway. But I think in that backfield, it's kind of like Belichick's old backfields where one fumble, one mistake, one guy getting hot for a minute could change things. So I'd go pretty big because the upside's big, but I wouldn't go massive, huge because you might get something worthless.
19 carries for Elijah Mitchell, just 1 for JaMychal Hasty. So although it was a touchdown. But so there is that. But it's pretty clear that it is going to be Mitchell first if they continue. But Sermon will come back, and he will be part of this picture. Don't drop Sermon. I'm with you on that too. The guild says who this guy. And by the way, he's a great player. I have him. He's winning my main event league. He says that's why you draft Mitchell everywhere. Yeah. That's right. If you have the 20-man spots, it's awesome. I have him in that. The thing is, he was available in the 20th round too. That was the crazy thing, right? Everywhere. So, but it's because there were 4 backs for us to speculate on.
I'll tell you something else. Like Marquez Callaway, he went in the 4th round in your league, he went in the 7th in mine.
Yeah.
And Dalton was giving me crap because I had him like 60th. Like I
Right.
finally moved him up to like the 40s because I was like, okay, the market. I'm so out of step with the market here. I got to move him even though no one would get him. I was like, I got to like capitulate a little bit. And I was like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this guy's good. And look, it's one game. He might still be good. But then Traquan Smith is out in IR, and I'm like, maybe I screwed up. So I started doubting that, myself of being like, because this guy had a good preseason game. He was an undrafted guy. He was basically like got very few targets last year. And everyone's like drafting him like he's, Devonta Smith, the 10th overall pick, going in the same round, sometimes ahead of him. Or Michael Pittman, the 2nd round pick, who's in the 2nd year. They're going in the same place. And I was like, well, Traquan Smith could be just as good. Like, why are we believing this? Then Traquan goes on IR. I'm like, maybe I screwed up. But I think the truth is that that is, there's no way they can and especially with the receivers, there's no way they can say he's our guy. It's not even like the running back where like there's actually a guy on top. The receivers, it's all about target share. And you really just can't know till the game starts.
Yep. That's true. And also game flow matters here too with the case of Callaway. I mean, the Saints were winning the whole time here. Winston only threw the ball 20 times. Yeah, so they weren't really asking a whole lot.
But everyone else caught these long touchdowns.
Yep.
You'd think if you were open, he would have got a shot. But yeah, of course, let's, do not drop Marquez Callaway either. I mean, it's one game.
Right. A lot of these receivers we got to be patient on here.
But I think what we did learn is that he's like, we don't know what's going to happen with Callaway. I don't think we could say he's a bust. Right. But I think we can say that, he got 2 targets, that he's not clearly the go-to guy. And I think the reason you dropped in the 7th round, you were like, well, I don't know if it'll hold up, but he's clearly the go-to guy. And I think that assumption is gone. He could in the future become the go-to guy at some point before Michael Thomas returns, but he does not have that anymore. And that if we were to redraft again, that guy's going in like the 11th round or 12th round.
Probably. I think that's a good decision. If there's one thing we appreciate here, it's making good decisions at Rotowire, and even more so, making the right decision. Listen up, folks. I have an incredible offer for you with Rotowire's newest partner, WynnBET, the premier digital casino and sportsbook app. WynnBET is now the exclusive sponsor for Rotowire's fantasy podcast. WynnBET brings you all the latest action with a user-friendly experience, moneyline bets, boosted parlays, over-unders, round robins, live betting, and so much more at your fingertips. Want a break from sports betting? Head into WynnBET's digital casino and take a spin on roulette, double down in blackjack, slam the slots. That's what Chris does every time he's in Vegas.
Of course I do.
Or try your hand at Baccarat. WynnBET is currently available in 6 states: Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, Virginia, while rapidly expanding. At WynnBET, the possibilities are limitless. WynnBET is currently offering all Rotowire listeners a risk-free bet up to $500 on your first wager. Download WynnBET now. That's WYNNBET. WynnBET, the exclusive partner for Rotowire's fantasy podcast. Jeff and Chris here. We are recapping week 1. We made it through a whole segment, Chris, without talking about your Giants.
Yeah, let's just keep going with that. I don't need to talk about it. It was so, what was so disappointing about that was not that anything different happened, that it was exactly what it's been like the last 2 years. Like,
yep.
It would have been like it wasn't even like, oh, they're worse. It was like they're exactly the same. They're exactly the same team. It was, the defense is okay. They gave up some tough 4th down conversions that there are a couple drives just for like they made it on 4th down. It was like really frustrating. But then they actually got lucky because KJ Hamler dropped an easy touchdown, a long touchdown. And then they got a fumble that Logan Ryan recovered. And then, Judy gets hurt, which is going to cost me a win. It's cost him probably 6 weeks. But
they're saying high ankle sprain with that, by the way. So I think we'll see.
6 weeks.
Yeah.
And look bad. It might be more. But anyway, because, Michael Thomas basically lost his whole season to that, even though he was back for a little bit. So it was just a bad game. Teddy Bridgewater is just good enough. Like, he just scrambled enough. He's not a great runner, but he got out of the pass rush. He completed some throws. They just were letting these guys run crossing routes and catch these short balls over the middle all day. And then the offense, like, the line is pretty bad. Danny Dimes made some throws, but he made some bad throws. And a lot of throws that toward the end were just like behind people. They were just like not good throws. Saquon looked healthy. He got his 10 carries and a couple of targets, but he just never really had any room, and he needs like a lot of carries because he needs to get stuffed 10 times with that line and then bust a 70-yarder. It's kind of how it works with him. Galladay looked healthy. I thought that was good. Shepard looked pretty sharp. He was making some catches. He caught the touchdown. And Dimes looks quick and fast.
That fumble was a killer, though.
It was such a stupid fumble too, because he'd already kind of gotten to where he needed to go, and it's like, so his problem was pocket awareness, right? Like just don't hold it too long, get rid of it. He didn't get destroyed. He got sacked a couple times by Von Miller, but I think that was it. And he didn't fumble it from a sack, but that was just a stupid fumble because it was unnecessary. Like when you're getting strip sacked, it's kind of hard when you're looking down the field, and that's pocket awareness. This was just sort of like bad ball security as he was already going to the ground. It wasn't like he was trying to like gain extra yards. So it was just a bad game, It just, and then Joe Judge. I mean, I don't really care. Threw the challenge flag within 2 minutes. This is an error, but I don't think that guy's splitting the atom either. I'm pretty bearish. And again, if my team played like crap, I can just like move on to the next week. It's just that like it was such a continuation of all the things they did wrong the last 2 years that it was pretty disappointing.
Yeah. There was a lot of similarities. It seemed like the same old Giants. Shepard looked good. That was a good thing. Barkley did not get untracked. He didn't have, just didn't get that chance. There'll be better days probably. Denver's a pretty good defense. I think that's also one of the takeaways I'd say from this too.
They're a very good defense, and they were overmatched, and it wasn't a good like first defense to face. But
right.
And Saquon looked healthy. I mean, he looked fine, so he's gonna be good. But the offensive line is just, I don't know what is the problem. They used the 4th pick on Andrew Thomas. They used the 2nd round pick on Will Hernandez. They invested in the offensive line, and they just cannot get it together. Like they should have probably drafted. I mean, Tony maybe end up being a good player. He didn't do much, barely had a role, but they should have just drafted best available lineman or something. Cause that's really, or just kept the Justin Fields pick and just been like, all right, Danny Dimes, you're not the answer. I still think Danny Dimes could be okay. I just want to see him behind a decent offensive line for once and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, he's an answer. It's just not, you just don't have the question right. But I don't know. It was frustrating if you're a Giants fan for sure. Bengals fan, I was going right in the roller coaster. I thought they were, they looked really kind of rough for a while, but then they caught fire in the second quarter. Burrow looked good throwing a deep ball. They unlocked Jamar Chase. Gotta love that. Joe Mixon actually looked pretty good. The pass rush was starting to get to him later in that game. Second half, they kind of went into a shell. But then in overtime, I mean, they got the break on the fumble call. That probably shouldn't, if that was not originally ruled a fumble by Dalvin Cook, then they go to review on that. They don't overturn it. It's one of those where it was inconclusive on the overturn either way. So what the original call was what really mattered, and they originally called it a fumble. So a rare Dalvin Cook fumble, and that was massive because the Vikings were driving. They were going to win that game. The Bengals
I was
were
sure
having a
when it
hard
went
time.
to overtime and the Vikings were going to win. I was like, the Bengals, they couldn't put it away. They let him back in. They're going to lose. This is so Bengals to do that. And I was pissed because I took the Bengals +3, and I was like, I'm going to get a push on this. They'll probably score a touchdown. I'll get a loss. And I was happy to see them win, Jeff. I was actually hoping for a tie because I still would have covered, and I don't,
And that would be so Bengals. Yep, I get it. Yeah.
But I good for them. They covered the spread. That's the most important.
Two different 4th down plays were huge in that game. The first one was idiotic. As someone who cries all the time when teams punt, they needed to punt. It was on their own 30, 4th and 1. Mixon slipped. He might have been, if he hadn't slipped, he might have been able to connect and get that first down. Regardless, it was bad situation, and you're up 21-7 at the time. It gave the Vikings life. Then they connected on their own 4th down to get that touchdown. That was huge. Thielen had both of them there. That was pretty massive for him. Big game for him. But it swung everything. The Bengals were cruising before that. Cousins wasn't sustaining long drives. And then that just kind of changed the nature of the game. It got a little frantic at the end too. And, 2-minute drill is completely different. The pass rushers get worn out. They don't get any pressure on Cousins. He's able to move the team quickly to get him in a field goal position. Like, here we go again. But then in overtime, the Bengals, after that fumble, they had their own 4th down play from midfield. That was the ballsiest call I've seen in a long time. Instead of running it right into the pile, looked like it was going to do again, did that really good play action, went to the tight end. No one thought to cover him. Big 20-yard play. A lot. I think the Vikings were thinking they were trying to get drawn offside. I don't think the Bengals were going to run a play. At least, yeah.
They thought that Zach Taylor was a nutless monkey and wasn't going to do it. They didn't
right.
believe. It's like, a poker, you just think some guy is going to fold or something, and he doesn't, it's a problem. You think you could bluff somebody. Yeah, that was a big win. I thought, Jamar Chase, I expected Chase. I expected the preseason to be noise. And he was one of my FOMO guys late. I was like, I didn't get any Chase.
Mm-hmm.
His price didn't drop that much because of the preseason, a little bit, maybe half a round. But most of the sharp NFFC guys were still taking him 6th, 7th round. They weren't, he wasn't slipping beyond that. But I kind of felt like this guy's like considered one of the best receiving prospects in the last several years. He's with his old quarterback. There's just no way that preseason is going to be determinative of how well he does. But one thing also, I almost drafted Boyd in the 7th in my prime time, which is going to lose, by the way, but mostly because of Herbert and a couple other things. But I almost drafted him, and I thought, you know what? We think Boyd is this like 85 catch, like solid floor guy, but I'm like, is that going to be the case with 2 other guys in the same receiving core that are way more dynamic than him?
Well, I want to see what happens once like defenses shift over to Chase a little bit. I'm sure they weren't prioritizing their coverage schemes for him. I think they realize who he is and all that. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, I don't think that they necessarily were like, yeah, we're gonna focus on him and shut him down. But I think as that, like for instance, the 2-minute drill, the long play. I mean, it was one-on-one coverage there, and hell of a job by Burrow. Connecting on a deep throw. It took him like 7 weeks to connect on one more than 20 yards last year. I mean, it was ridiculous how bad it was over 20 yards. I'm exaggerating just by a little bit. It took him forever to connect on deep balls. It's amazing when you've got a guy like Chase that can get separation more so than AJ Green.
Yeah, I mean, it's night and day. And then also, right, like Higgins is a problem too. He's really big. He's gonna beat guys one-on-one too. So you can't double everybody. And also, it's hard to double guys down the field.
Yeah.
Right? It's easier to double them when they're, running short and intermediate routes. But if they get on the defense, you can send a safety there. But now that safety is totally out of the play if the ball doesn't go there. So
right.
I think that, I don't know, Boyd may get his 85, but if someone gets hurt or whatever, but I feel like, they've got 2 guys that are like, Higgins looks like a real player and a playmaker. And then if Chase is a generational guy, I mean, Boyd is fine if like there's nothing there, but it just seems like he's not going to be like as heavily featured.
That's right. Quick note from our friends at Fantasy Stand. Playing fantasy sports is so much fun, but once you dive deeper fighting against other players for a percentage of the pot, there might be sharks. Even when your fantasy team crushes it, those skilled pros like Chris Liss may leave you without a single cent. Luckily, the days of having a great score and not getting loot are over. With Fantasy Stand, you're playing against the house. If you reach the threshold, you win. It's that simple. Sorry, baby sharks. To participate, choose a free or paid entry contest in the lobby. For salary cap, you have to pick 9 players while staying at or under the salary cap. For Pick'em, you simply pick 1 player from each tier they are presented with. Done. Now sit back and watch the results to see if your fantasy team has what it takes to stand out from the rest. Come out as the high scorer, get ready for additional prizes. So where do you stand? Visit fantasystand.com to sign up today. Thanks to Fantasy Stand and thanks to our Blue Wire sponsors for your sponsorship and ability to carry a podcast on this network. Talking with Chris Liss, we are recapping week 1. A few other things to kind of discuss here before we sign out today. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, we could go on for 3 hours and just break everything down, but I don't want to do that. No one really wants us to do that. But anyways, a couple other things I wanted to discuss a little bit there. I was really impressed with Philly, both offensively and defensively. I think you kind of were all over Jalen Hurts. Even if you didn't get him in a ton of leagues, you were always talking him up, always suggesting he's that guy that has the potential to break out. He looked good. The Philly running game looked good, and the defense looked really good.
Yeah, I mean, Miles Sanders, I have him in more leagues than I intended. It wasn't a guy I was targeting, but he just kept falling. And I kept thinking in the 4th round or 5th round, late 5th in the prime time, like this guy was going in the 1st round last year. And the whole offense, people don't realize, people are like, oh, he had a bad year. He fumbled a bunch. He dropped some passes. Okay. But look at what happened. They had the quarterback at the time that he was benched that led the league in turnovers, in interceptions, fumbles, and sacks taken. You cannot sustain drives. You cannot feed a running back under those conditions. And then the last couple of games, Hurts comes in and Sanders does well. And remember, he was the 1st round pick last year. So it just seemed like that was an easy one. He looked really good. He caught a few passes. Problem is Gainwell, who actually is his backup, not Boston Scott, which is one of those things that could have gone the other way. You know, preseason, you assume it's Gainwell. He's being drafted that way, but it ends up being Boston Scott. It was Gainwell, and he looked really good. So I have a bunch of those guys and both of those guys, and I think this is going to be a real offense. The offensive line is healthy. Rieger and Devonta Smith caught touchdowns. Goddard caught a touchdown. Ertz didn't do as much. I kind of liked Ertz as a sleeper, but so far not much. But this offense is good, and the defense, as you said, looked good. Now Atlanta's not a great team, but I think I'd take them over the Cowboys to win the NFC East. I mean, I think the football team has a good defense, and we could talk about how that game went down. But I think the Eagles could be the favorite in the NFC East right now.
Yeah. Andy McGill asks, is Philly's D that good, or is Dave Rangone just the Matt Nagy of talent utilization? I was disappointed with the number of targets Ridley and Pitts got, but I kind of think some of this is on Matt Ryan too. It's not just the offensive coordinator and the play calling. I wonder if there's a big decline phase here for Matt Ryan. Sometimes these guys turn, and they turn to dust pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? We're used to, we're looking at Brady at 44 and Drew Brees was 41 last year. But Peyton was done at 39 or whatever, and it wasn't just the neck thing. I mean, he was fine with the neck thing the first year. I wouldn't say fine, but he was okay. Yeah. And then he just couldn't do it anymore. Ryan's 36. He's not that old, but not everybody is the all-time Hall of Fame greats that can that sometimes, you see this in baseball, that 32 or 33 is when they're done, or 35 is when they're done, and it's not everybody plays like Ted Williams till they're 41 or something and it's still good. So I don't know. And I said, Kyle Pitts, everyone said, oh, where's the generational guy there? He got 8 targets. Ridley got 8 targets. Neither of them did anything. But I think if Matt Ryan is not done, those guys will be fine. If Matt Ryan is done, we got a problem. But I would still, I moved him down slightly, but I wouldn't be too panicked about either one of those guys.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. We'll see. I mean, if I'm holding on to Ryan in a couple places where I have him, but like, for instance, I have him in the classic, but I also have him backed up with Trevor Lawrence. It's like, I shouldn't say he's the backup to Trevor Lawrence. Yes. Lawrence, so Lawrence had his typical struggles, by the way, rookie struggles. All the rookie quarterbacks lost yesterday.
Lawrence put up big numbers. And I think this is just going to do it. I mean, the athleticism, arm strength, everything's there. He looks good. He made some bad decisions, but like DJ Chark's going to catch long touchdowns. Shenault, to me, he just seems like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about him. I didn't draft him, but like, it just seems like he's a short pass catcher. Like he's like a poor man's Deebo Samuel, like a slightly slower Deebo Samuel. Maybe he's a little bigger, but that there's not like that vertical game with him. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Marvin Jones caught some passes. I think that they're going to be in shootouts. If they couldn't stop the Texans, I don't think their defense is really going to hold the line very much. So they're going to be in shootouts. And, God, you got to love Jonathan Taylor, because not only did he get a lot of work, but against like the Texans, Titans, and Jaguars twice each. Oh, man. That schedule is so good.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I mean, the Jaguars were horrible. They were really awful. Urban Meyer, God, why? You have. I mean, they were playing from behind, so there weren't that many runs to begin with. But he was splitting time with Carlos Hyde. Just gross. Just stop.
Apparently, Robinson ran a lot of routes and was on the field more, so that people I was reading were saying, maybe it was Jerry Donabedian said, "Don't panic on Robinson." The usage stats were all right. But I do, I think we do focus, and it's usually right, these usage stats. I was looking at some of them, like CEH got like a huge percentage of the snaps, but like, I just don't think they're going to check down. So he's going to have design plays to him. Otherwise, he's not going to catch a lot of passes. And if he doesn't catch a lot of passes, I just don't think he's that great or that he's going to score that many touchdowns. Like, I think they throw the ball a ton, and if he's not a huge part of that, it's just hard to see the ceiling for him. So usage is nice, but it's got to be, good usage, not just snap count, but like in the passing game. By contrast, Christian McCaffrey, I thought, okay, this is something I didn't realize. I thought, okay, McCaffrey was hurt all last year. He's like 5'10", 5'11", 205. He's very slight. Hurt all last year, signed to a big contract. And I'm like, all right, they draft Chuba Hubbard. And I'm like, they're going to go easier on McCaffrey. They're going to give him 220 carries or something like that. McCaffrey gets every single running back carry, right? 21 carries, 1 for DJ Moore, 5 for the quarterback.
Right.
And leads the team in receiving with 9 targets, catches all 9 of them for 89 yards. They are not going easy on McCaffrey. McCaffrey, as long as he holds up, is 1.1 with the bullet still. And the idiocy that I did to get the 9th pick, even though I ended up getting the first choice, where I got Zeke and Najee Harris, and I felt good about that. I was at least able to bench Zeke for Kenneth Gainwell after his game Thursday night. So I got a few extra
That's
points.
crazy.
But I mean, Zeke got 5 points. I'm like, I'll take my chances on Gainwell. But Najee Harris got every carry also. He got all 16 carries. He was on the field the whole time. And I do think Pittsburgh, I don't know if their running game is just really that bad or Buffalo's stout. But we can't just look at these usage patterns in a vacuum. We really have to look at it and say, well, yeah, Najee Harris did not get targets. The Steelers couldn't run at all. They couldn't run last year. And yeah, it's great he was on the field. Mike Tomlin's doing the Mike Tomlin thing, but I'm still a little nervous about my Najee Harris shares.
Yeah, for sure. I'm nervous for you. I don't have any of them, but that's weird.
Najee Davenport, level.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Something closet. But anyways, let's take one more commercial note here from our friends at Vivid Seats. Preseason football has wrapped up, and we're ready for the regular season to kick off this week. Live events are making a comeback, and there's no better place to be than Vivid Seats to get back into the action. So grab your NFL tickets and cheer on your favorite team from the stands. Man, that feels great to say. Even better, they just launched a new and improved rewards program with free tickets for every fan. Earn rewards, ticket upgrades, and perks just for shopping. If you're looking for tickets to the game, your favorite artist, or that new show everyone is talking about, Vivid Seats has it all. Visit vividseats.com or download the app today. Vivid Seats, experience it live. We were talking about that Bills-Steelers game. Bills, a pretty big disappointment there too. And they started with a big surprise, the healthy scratch of Zach Moss. I thought Moss was there was all this talk. Moss is ahead of Singletary. Singletary might get cut. I saw that on my timeline at the beginning of training camp. He was a healthy scratch. Singletary got like 79% snap share. Now, again, it's a Bills running back, so there's a limited upside still there. So it's kind of funny. The answer is you really don't want any of them there because you don't want to have to start them.
I have Singletary in a couple places, and I was perfectly content to start him in my 14-team very deep roster league, and he got me like 70 yards or something.
Yeah, I guess that's fine.
They don't catch a lot of passes, although Singletary caught 38 last year, so it wasn't a total zero. And he's not going to catch like 50, but he might catch, if he were the only guy, he would. And he's not going to get a lot of touchdowns because Josh Allen runs in so many touchdowns and they throw so much. But, I mean, we're not all in the 8-team leagues that you play in, Jeff. Sometimes we need to go a little deeper and start the Bills running back.
Dude, I'm in the 16-teamer. I don't want to even hear it. 16-teamer, and I lost Gus Edwards. I was like,
Did you draft him at the new cost or the old cost?
The new cost, yeah. It was actually setting the cost. I mean, it was one of those, like, it happened, it was the day after Dobbins' injury, and it was a slow draft, and we're just like, okay. I think, it was like, and 16-teamer, and so it's 4th round and a 16-teamer. It's like in a 12-rounder, that's the 5th round. Okay, fine. And that was my second running back. That's the thing. It's like, and then you had to wait a really long time to get the next one there, and then you have to make these tough decisions. It's brutal.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, I have some problems. I lost all my NFFC matches. I'm winning all my other ones, but like those are the lower stakes one. I might go 5-4, and if you count the keeper league, 6-4. But the 4 that I lost are really the ones that hurt. And they were more, it's like the first 2 weeks, you got to get above half, right? So I think I'm going to be 8th in those. I don't know. I got to see because there's a lot of guys who still have Monday night players. But
So
it's
the
like,
online classic, it's half and half, and I'm just sitting on the edge in one of them. There, I'm fifth right now, but I'm done. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
it's
you're
best
gonna
ball.
get there.
No, it's not. I'm, it's not best ball. So then you're like, oh, why did I make this decision? Why did I do that decision? Like, ooh, I didn't start Mike Williams. I started Michael Pittman, who I drafted after him. Oh, because of the windfall factor there. Oh,
That's so funny. That's so funny. I subbed in Elijah Moore at the last minute for somebody in the prime time. Somebody that I can't remember who it was, and that really hurt, man. And then also I had Herbert starting, who had like 20 points, and on my bench was Trevor Lawrence with like 38 or something. So, but I wasn't gonna. I mean, I could have started him in the Texans, but I wasn't gonna play first start ever over the quarterback I had ranked fourth overall. So I just did it. Who did I put in Elijah Moore for? Oh, no, that's not the one. I'm looking at Trey Sermon, but that's a different league. I got to look at this because this.
Well, I did Elijah Moore over Michael Gallup in a couple of leagues, and
that's a little bit, but I did Elijah Moore over. I did him over Elijah Mitchell. There was no one. Well, Jalen Reagor. Oh, Mike Evans. That's what happened. Is Mike Evans had his. That wouldn't have made that much of a difference. Mike Evans had his dud game on Thursday night, and so I just subbed in Elijah Moore for him because you're going to take a random guy rather than 5 points. So that's what it was.
Yeah. How about with Cleveland too? I was like, Donovan Peoples-Jones. We could use him now that OBJ is not playing. No, right. It's Schwartz, Anthony Schwartz, the rookie out of Auburn. That's who you really wanted to have. It's like, yeah, it really is amusing to me to see okay. You assumed you thought it was one way, but it's the other. Definitely a lot of that going on.
Yeah, I'm going to lose despite having Gronk go for 29. So that's tough, but it is what it is. 1 week. You can't really, if you want to win the one of these leagues, you got to go like 9-4. You can't go 7-7. I mean, you can't lose that many games. You have like 4. It's almost like it's not quite college football, but you just really can't lose. So you lose one, it's pretty bad. Like because the teams are always like 9-2. Through 11 weeks that are in first place. It's not like sometimes you have a very condensed league where everybody has the same record because it's well balanced, but. Yeah, so I gotta figure it out. But I kind of like the team. The team did okay. It was just a couple of guys didn't do very well.
Yeah, one other game we haven't really talked a whole lot about yet was Arizona and Tennessee. I was aggressively wrong with this one too. I thought Tennessee would win. I thought they'd cover. I thought at worst this is a matchup of even teams, but Arizona dominated this game. Chandler Jones was running roughshod through that offensive line. They did not protect Tannehill at all. Just an awful game for Tannehill. An awful, he got a rushing TD and a passing TD, so it's going to end up looking okay. Even the kicker was terrible for Tennessee. I mean, they got Badgley because I think their other kicker got hurt, so they brought in Badgley at the last second. He lost, a lot of playing time. Lost the job in San Diego, or not San Diego, with the Chargers. And he showed why he lost that job.
He's like on his 15th. He's one of those just like merry-go-round kickers that gets. Signed when somebody gets hurt or is terrible. They got destroyed, and it was. I mean, their defense. You really want to face their defense because the Cardinals were just having fun. And the FOMO I had on Murray was, I was feeling that him and Chase. There were a few guys that I was like, I wish I'd gotten them. Yeah, and I didn't. And I was like, man, it's really painful to watch. The one guy Hopkins, who I got in 3 leagues, I thought I got him in 2, but I had undercounted. I realized I took him in the second round over Ridley, and I took him over AJ Brown in the first 2 times. And I like Dalton was mocking me, like, "How are you taking this old guy?" Whatever. I'm like, I don't know. Hopkins walks out of bed and gets 110 catches, but the games start, you realize the guy's like Hopkins. 1 week, but like I just like appreciate that guy. I'm like, oh yeah, that guy, right? Yeah, the guy that I used to not draft because he wasn't very fast and just average size, but just catches absolutely anything in his vicinity and always gets his feet in bounds in the end zone. Or wherever. That was kind of fun. So, no one's drafting Christian Kirk, although Rondell Moore had a good game too. But that they're not going to face Tennessee every week, so I don't think we want to get that excited. And Murray did not run very much. He scored a touchdown, but he only had 20 yards. But they just made it look easy.
There's a couple interesting contrasts in divisions. The AFC South looked terrible. Houston won. The team that we thought might go winless, thought it was punting. Well, they're the only team in that division that won. Colts got beat pretty comfortably. And of course, we saw what happened with Tennessee. They got smoked. The NFC West looks stacked. Rams, Cardinals, Seahawks, and the Niners all rolled.
All good teams,
Although the Niners made it more interesting than it should have been, but it really wasn't. It took It took onside kicks to make it look more interesting.
41-17.
Yeah.
They scored with 153 at 41-17. At the 2-minute warning, it was a 24-point margin.
Right.
And the Lions had the ball in like at the 30-yard line with 35 seconds left to tie the game, basically. It just they should have kicked the field goal because they would have covered.
Right.
And
we all would have been happy.
It would have been the greatest backdoor. You have a very small chance of actually tying because you still got to win in overtime, even if you make the two. Yeah. But the field goal was a given. And why wouldn't you want to have the greatest cover in history? Just give up the game. Just give up the remote chance of winning. Get the greatest cover in history. It's just like overusing your pitcher for a perfect game. It's like, okay, it may not be in our optimal best interest, but we'll get the perfect game. It's worth it. Just kick the field goal. You're the Lions. Get the greatest.
Late in the week, the line moved to some people got up to 9 points on that, and so they got that cover. You and I, we got screwed because we had to do it earlier for staff picks, and it was at 7.5.
We didn't get screwed. We should have taken the Niners. Is what we should have done.
Yeah, it was the right side for most of the game. You're right about that. So yeah, there is that too. And then the NFC North looked terrible. The Vikings, at least they went to overtime on the road, and they had a nice little comeback.
The Vikings looked amazing. They almost beat the Bengals. What a incredible show.
Huge. But
they were the
Packers,
best. They were the best. Yeah.
Yeah, Packers got murder death killed. The Bears got smoked in LA. They got it to within 7 at one point, but then the Rams took care of business again there. And then the Lions, again, they had to have the miracle almost cover. And that's not exactly great either there. And they look so exploitable too. Their defense is awful. Again, Okuda got hurt in that one too. He was getting crushed before that, but I guarantee you his replacement's not better than him. But so we'll see about that. But anyways, any other parting thoughts before we sign off?
Biggest takeaway is the Eagles, I think, and that their offense looks pretty good. I know it was an easy matchup, but I think that's going to be a team that's people are going to invest in. And the Texans were actually a real team. I mean, it was people thought they were going 0-17, and some people use the Jaguars and Survivor, and they traded away.
They deserve to lose on that.
But they traded away their cornerback, their best corners. They're giving up, everyone thinks, and then they have a blowout win in week 1. So I thought those are the two big stories.
Yep, exactly right. All right. That's going to conclude today's podcast. I want to thank WinBet. I want to thank you guys for chiming in on the comments there. Appreciate it. We will be back at you again tomorrow with Jake and Joe. We have a lot of waiver wire suggestions for you. I'll be back with a guest to be named later for Wednesday's podcast, and we'll be on every single day this week. Thanks for listening. Good luck on Monday night. Take care.